MakeDenton.com. My name is Kevin Roden. I'm here with James King, who's running for the place 6 at-large position. A candidate pool of 5, maybe 4, we're going to find out, for the May 8th City Council elections coming up. Welcome, James.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Why don't you start off by just telling us why you're interested in pursuing a council seat?
I'm interested in running for council because I believe that you should step up to the plate at times. I think it's almost like a rotation. In all the different parts of the city, I think when people have an ability or a talent, I think they should volunteer. And not that everybody's got to volunteer for city council. I think you could be on not-for-profits. I think you could volunteer at your church. I think that's what makes a community. I think I have a unique set of skills that'll be helpful at the city council level. And that's why I'm running. I got the bug put in my ear. I thought about it for a while and showed common sense and said no to myself, and then realized, no, I really ought to. So I'm excited to be doing it.
Is your wife in full support of this as
You
well?
know, that's the funny part. She was, in my mind, that'll be one of my outs, and she was totally excited about it. So rats, no, I couldn't even use that as an out.
She's ready to be first lady of place 6, right?
She's just ready to jump in, and that's her personality.
Sure. Okay, great. Well, you talked about this desire to serve, and when you have talents, you got to bring them to the table and help out. What are those talents of yours? What experiences and perspectives do you bring to the table that would benefit the council? Well,
as far as Denton, I've been here my whole life. I went to Texas A&M, also went to North Texas. I have an accounting degree. I'm a CPA. I'm a long-term business owner, and have multiple things going. I like multiple activities at the same time. I'm able to coordinate those. I think a city has multiple activities at all given times. My biggest strength, though, is working within a group that has to achieve results. Whether the group totally agrees, they have to have an output. And I think the dynamics of that are terribly interesting. That's what I've enjoyed on the other not-for-profits. It's what I enjoy about my business now. We don't always have to agree, but we know we've got to make a certain amount of money because we're going to spend a certain amount of money.
Denton has some hard decisions to make in light of anticipated, not deficits with the budget, but definitely not enough money coming in to cover up what they want to be able to spend. So this is a two-sided question, and one side would be, what sort of cuts would you be in favor of? And the other question would be, we'll get to that in a second, which would be, what sort of new revenue ideas would you have in order to bring more money in?
Okay. I could work it backwards because they both are interesting, but I think cuts, even like a business, is to find anything material, anything non-essential. And in my business, if we have to cut, we want to save the people for last. And we hope that it turns around before we get to the people. I think that's what works best in our city. We have a ton of assets that we use. Some of them deplete very quickly. A police car has a certain life and it's gone. Those have to be replaced. We can't just maintain everything. Sometimes it's more expensive to maintain it. And I think cars is a good idea. They have a standard rotation and they have a standard balance when they look at the maintenance that's needed versus buying a new automobile. That's a standard practice they have. I think during this time frame, some of those have to be extended. The city has a phase 1 and a phase 2 expense reducing plan right this moment. And actually, they've used multiple people in the city to brainstorm ideas. Some really outlandish and some very practical and very obvious. And sometimes a recession in all of our businesses forces us to something we could have been doing all along. We just have to be forced to it. And,
now, with your experience in keeping on that question and in the business world, oftentimes this isn't critical. It's just kind of the nature of the game. Oftentimes, you see government entities not having to respond to the similar sorts of market pressures and desire to be efficient that the business world has.
Yes.
Will that be frustrating for you coming on to a council where you're helping to direct policy of essentially a bureaucracy?
I think any bureaucracy is frustrating.
Yeah.
Even the people within the bureaucracy are probably frustrated by it. But you can't just come in and magically say, hey, last night I drew up this list. Follow my list. It comes up to being persuasive, listen to other opinions that may differ, may be better than yours, or may mix them. But the hard part is it takes, to even implement a policy today may take 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 2 years to complete. Because some of your obligations you can't just stop paying. And it would be frustrating, but not overwhelmingly so.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a reality.
Yeah, sure.
You can't, it's really nice to come in and say, everybody above X dollars, we're letting you go because we're going to replace everybody with lesser dollars. It looks good on paper, or maybe in the paper, it's basically impossible to pull off. But you can let attrition work and let people retire, and they'll be replaced by younger people working within the system, and maybe at lesser salaries because they might be able to attain people at less salaries. But I think attrition is a great way right this moment.
What about the revenue side of the
revenue
coin?
side? It's a distinguish between finding new ways for revenue or finding new people to move here paying within the same revenue. Anytime a government entity just says, let's just find new revenue, well, that's called a tax.
Right.
Or called fees that weren't there. Let's make people pay for what they used not to have to pay for. And I don't like that idea. I think that's part of the tension that keeps it healthy is people legally want to avoid paying taxes, legally, and a government wants to legally collect taxes. And there's always that tension between, we can't just give it to you and you can't just have it, that keeps a government accountable. It's just like a customer buying services. They don't just walk in and say, hey, can I overpay today? It keeps you having to provide something that's worth it. And as far as new or additional revenue, I think we need to increase partnership between our Chamber of Commerce, our business community, our city, our county, and we have some fantastic institutions here. And to look for industry that might fit research that's being done at the universities or that might complement industries we have here. And I think we just have to keep being aggressive to do that. And you don't have to give abatements every time someone comes to a town. And like, the first business in, if you have a large business, they might get an abatement. They might pay to extend the utilities to wherever their plan is. It's the additional businesses that might follow them that you don't have to give abatements to. They bring the same kind of property taxes you and I pay, and which is wonderful as far as there's more jobs here, keeps more people that came here just like you did and thought this is a great university instead of a great city. I want to stay. And it's really nice when you don't have to commute and you can stay here and live in this great community.
Yeah, it seems to be a concern of a younger demographic in town, of really loving Denton, love what it has to offer, but they have to go to Dallas to attain work.
It's like, do I have to like Highway 35 or either W or E going into the city? I sort of like a short commute.
Right.
And I think that's a challenge. I think that's a challenge worth meeting. And I think, to be real honest, over the last 20 years, that has happened in some ways. It's not an overnight fix, and sometimes there are jobs people prefer in the Metroplex. And it can be anywhere. They could be going 380 to McKinney.
Maybe with the train coming in, they'll be fine with
true.
Their commute.
Actually, that's going to be very interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. During the Firefighters Forum earlier this week, you mentioned that one of your strengths was not having all the answers.
Yes.
But rather in listening to the citizens. If you're elected, this is a struggle, I think, for anyone representing people. But what strategies would you employ to make sure that you have your ear to the ground and you're hearing various entities?
I might have to develop an attic in my house.
Do your own interviews. Right.
Actually, that's one of my absolute passions is being with people. And that you can't just be with people and stare at them. You've got to talk to them, and they've got to talk to you. And quite literally, I'm a very approachable person. My personality is that way. And I've actually had some friends tell me that may kill me being a councilman because I'd get so many phone calls. But that's also the fun of it.
You can call him at 2 a.m. It's okay.
He'll probably stand up and answer and start talking. And I'm sort of an over-talker. But that's, the ability to listen or ask. In fact, that's the ability to ask and find out who to ask. And search out answers, search out ideas. That's a quality I bring.